Whether you've thought much about it or not, we've all collected something or felt the need to gather, scrounge something up, and oogle at our findings. But why? And how did we manage to insert this into digital spaces? As you might have already known, our brains are still set in our hunter-gatherer preset. We just haven't had the time to evolve past it. And what this means is that while the men would go gather up elk or bison, the women and children would stay put at whatever camp they had, gathering up berries and nuts. This would be helpful if the hunt wasn't as successful as they thought it would be. They didn't catch enough fish. That's alright, we still have some cashews and berries, and when picking up these nuts and berries, like most tasks that we have to do to survive, it feels good. Our brains send us feel-good hormones. But we have a natural hedonic, I think that's how you say that? Hedonic treadmill. We might be happy with the fact that we have enough food for the day, but what about the next day? Like, rise and grind, shoddy. Delete that. But that's just a very logical reason to look at collecting. So what about the things that we don't need to collect? Because obviously we don't need to collect naked babies with nothing but hats on. There's a lot of recorded findings of ancient humans and Neanderthals as well, adorning themselves with shells, as well as painting on themselves and cave walls. And you could say that this is probably just some kind of uniform, but who knows? It's not like we can go ask them. They buried their dead with so many different kinds of treasures, like animal bones, shells, and maybe even flowers. But the way we collect has changed, and nowadays you might see someone collecting just to fill a void or just to have a hobby. People grinding online just to fill out a set of stuff that they might not even like. They just want to own the whole set of whatever it is. Can't be a collection if it's not complete. But first, let's talk about the brief history of trinkets, collectibles, and how it has become a cultural phenomenon. What could be considered some of the first collectibles? Well, I would like to present to you the iconic Venus figurines. These were made by our ancient ancestors, and they're straight baddies. These Venus figurines were shaped into all different kinds of body types, and some were even male, and not all of them were naked or had genitalia, but it was clear that most of the time they were meant to represent beauty and fertility, so they were most likely women. And we don't really know why they were made. It was either just as a pastime, or maybe they thought that it was necessary to just make this and look at it. You could view it as like the ancient equivalent of a guy owning anime figures that are very promiscuous. And way later down the line, I'm sure we've had a bunch of different kinds of wooden figurines, clay figurines, usually toys, and for a moment of time, the world was obsessed with porcelain pugs. I'll link a video down below that covers the modern trinket state in depth, but this porcelain craze did eventually lead up to Precious Moments in the 70s, and then Beanie Babies in I think the 80s and 90s, and to you know what. And whatever else little trinket figure guy you can think of. This also applies to card collections. We started with baseball cards that came off the packs of cigarettes, kind of promoting smoking to children, if you think about it, all the way to iridescent cards with strange creatures and mythical beings on them. Don't come from cigarette packs. Kids who grew up with a certain toy might still collect that toy today. Think of Legos or Littlest Pet Shops, because we create such a emotional bond with this crap, because that's what it is. It's usually plastic or cardboard. And the only reason that we see a lot of women foaming over whatever trending figure is because they feel the need to blend in, and so do I and you, and it's basically unavoidable, because if you were signaled out in hunter-gatherer times, that meant death. Remember how I told you about the scarcity that came along with hunting and gathering berries and nuts? Sure, there might have been bushfuls, but it made us feel even more exhilarated when we beat people to the bush. So it should be no surprise that the scarcity tactics become the driving factor in these collective brands. But besides companies knowing how to pull all of our strings that we basically consent to anyway, there's something there with these little worlds, the littlest pet shops, calico critters, Lego city functions that people build even if it's to flood them. I'm still traumatized by that. A man has fallen into the river in Lego City. We play God this way. How little worlds make us feel like we are in control. First off, there's nothing that makes people feel more in control than picking something up and putting it where they want. But these little collections that can accrue into a little environment and are observable, and we create an emotional bond with not only the individual items but the set as a whole. A lot of successful toy brands get people hooked by the idea of fulfilling out their home or having parts that change the layout. You want to shit, you have to pay. Because I'd argue that creation is more addictive than consumption. Sure, I could spend hours grinding for diamonds in whatever game, and I think it's funny that I can name multiple games that you grind for diamonds in, but whatever. But the moment I get a calling for a project? What am I, British? What the fuck? But the moment I get a calling for a project, I'm on a whole nother level of locked in. Making little worlds is something that most people will cling to at some point in their life, as I will keep bashing over your head in the upcoming essays. So it's no surprise that this genre is popular in video games. Let's bring it back to the nut and berry behavior. This is front and center in survival games like Minecraft. You spend most of the day collecting wood, meat, you name it, and you feel motivated knowing that you'll go out the next day and gather up more shit. But Minecraft does another kind of collecting in the background. Achievements! If you play on Bedrock, then you'll see the potion bottle showing how many achievements you've gotten through a percentage. And you might even see that you could collect items for unlocking certain achievements. And on Java, it's per world, I think, and is laid out like a wall of medals. Leveling up in games makes us produce dopamine that is kind of a oversimplification of what's probably happening. But I'm sure it's not as rewarding as the dopamine that we get from carrying out physical tasks. But it's short and immediate, and it's why my brother scrolls on YouTube Shorts every day. That and the fact that the reward is randomized makes it even more addicting. But with video games, it isn't always randomized, and you'll even build anticipation as you see a bar go up, so I'm sure that's also I'm sure that's also like crack. Again, the hedonic treadmill. You collect anything and you're happy for about a couple of hours, and then all you can think about is your next purchase. Collecting doesn't have to just be for survival, as I've already stated. It doesn't even have to be for a particular reason. I have a friend who collects Roblox gears, and he has like 60-something gears. I asked him why he collects them, and he said that it's the limited aspect and keeping a memento to himself. And up until a year ago, I would bake the limited holiday cookies or whatever in Bloxburg and stock up on whatever seasonal paraphernalia. And I only did so because, in my mind, I was going to use the baked goods for a bakery. Never did that. I just liked the feeling of stocking up on something that I knew was scarce. And as for the seasonal items, I just liked decorating my little house with them. In Secret Staycation, I love unlocking a new produce guy. They're all so adorable. In Animal Crossing, I love oogling at the little items that have so much detail on them. Same goes for Toca Boca. And yes, I still play this shit, and you're lying if you say you don't play this game anymore. And as of lately, like writing the script lately, I like making little trinkets in Roblox, filling the crevices with knickknacks that I know someone might look at and admire the detail of. Because these items, digital and tangible, are useless, and that's what makes them so special. They serve no purpose but to be made and be obtained and to be observed. Because I think it's one of the many things that makes us people. I don't know when, but I'm a girl. Oh my god.